put your name in the chat and really today, really let us know who you are today. Let us know where you're from. Let us know why you're here. And I know it's going to be hard, but maybe share something that brings you joy, right? I'm currently in Flagstaff right now, hanging out with one of my very best and oldest friends, and we have a weekend of joy planned. And we all need that. So please share what brings you joy, because for some of us, we might need those ideas. We will have plenty of time to discuss our worst fears in the coming hour and in the coming weeks and months and probably years. But I also know that some of you might be struggling with your mental health right now. And if you find yourself in a dark place, I just want to remind everybody about the 988 Lifeline. It's 988lifeline.org, or you can call 988 to speak with a mental health professional. Because you know what? There's been people in my life who have reached out to me, and I've reached out to them because we are in a dark place right now. Here at Secular AZ, we focus on issues, not parties, but we know which party is chomping at the bit to implement the policies laid out in Project 2025. So no doubt, Secular AZ staff, our legal director, our board of directors, we're all going to be finding ourselves very busy in 2025 and beyond. So today, now that your political giving has probably slowed down a bit, I am asking each and every one of you to consider becoming a monthly donor today, because without your support, we simply cannot do this very important work. And as the Washington Post used to say, democracy dies in darkness. Or was that the New York Times? Either way, democracy dies in darkness. So we all need to be those shining lights that Vice President Harris talked about in her concession speech. But for today, we are going to be speaking with one of my favorite local journalists. Cameron Stevenson is the founding editor-in-chief, political correspondent for the Copper Courier. Y'all, if you don't read the Copper Courier, like, what are you even doing with your life? And also, the Instagram is fire. So you definitely want to show them support now at a time when local journalism is more important than ever. Cameron Stevenson has also worked as a journalist in Phoenix for over a decade. He also teaches writing and content creation at the you want to join one of our committees, Cameron? He also teaches writing and content creation at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at ASU. Cameron, I'm so glad that on such short notice you're joining us today. And is there anything about your bio that I may have missed or that you'd like to add?
No, that's perfect. I mean, right now our biggest focus is getting news and information to people who, honestly, my opinion, have clearly been misled with disinformation. There's a lot of people who I think unknowingly voted against their better interests in this election. And so that's why we are so active on Instagram. We're on TikTok. We're in newsletters. We really just want to get information to people in ways that they can understand it. And so yeah, that's the most important part of our bio right now.
So we just did a temperature check with everybody else, Cameron. How are you doing this week?
Uh, you know, the prospect of covering another Trump term, in addition to everything that could bring, is just exhausting from the perspective of a president who demands attention constantly, and this time around doesn't have any fears of facing re-election, doesn't plan on holding another election, and has made it clear that he is okay with people harming his political opponents or perceived political. I mean, just last week he gave people the go ahead to kill journalists. So um,
And Liz Cheney and firing
yeah,
squad. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
not a great place to be. But there's, as always, there's cause for determination and things we can do to see a light at the end of it.
Yeah, we're all looking for lights right now. You know, you said something right off the bat about a president or presidential candidate who demands attention. And as a journalist, I mean, I want to get your take on it, but as someone who's not a journalist, I don't necessarily feel like the 24/7 Trump show, just highlighting the ridiculous stuff that he does, is doing any of us any favors, and it's certainly not news. Do journalists or the media bear some responsibility for giving this guy a platform endlessly?
Yeah, I I honestly I think we bear a lot of responsibility. Going even back to 2015, when political discourse was different and there was more room to discuss policy. At that time, cameras were on an empty podium while a candidate who was talking policy was not getting any media attention. Now we've done similar where we'll show Trump either ad nauseum, and so people tune out. Nobody really watched him for 40 minutes dancing by himself on stage. They heard about it, maybe didn't believe it, or even worse, print journalism. The When reporting on him, it's very easy to. I think the term now is sane washing, where you take everything that he's saying and you can't. There's not enough ink to print everything he's saying, so you have to summarize it. And so when you summarize it, it sounds like it because you're writing from yourself as a reporter, and you're trying to make sense of it, and sometimes you're giving sense, giving it sense where there isn't any. And so I
Yeah.
think that has done a lot to one kind of make people apathetic, mistrusting of the media, or even feel like he's even though he's nothing of the sort, an underdog who's being unfairly attacked, and people can kind of see themselves in that. Whether or not that's accurate at all.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back to you real quick. So I'd love to hear the Copper Courier's origin story. Like what was it that motivated you to start your own local publication?
Yeah, so it was a little while coming actually. So in when Trump was elected, I worked at a local TV station, AZTV. They're run by a very conservative family, and they started injecting that into their programming. So I got a job at what I thought would be a more promising outlet, which is Arizona PBS, which at that time, 2016, 2017, was just utterly unequipped to handle constant lies, to call out people when they weren't saying something that was correct, and to really just call things what they were. Most of the media didn't know how to do that, so it was very frustrating. So I left that job, just kind of frustrated with journalism in general. Got into some activism work. I worked on a couple political campaigns in 2018 for Kathy Hoffman and Kelly Fryer, who ran for governor at the time. Um, Once that finished, I got a job working in for a nonprofit, homelessness, addressing homelessness, and then, but this whole time I was trying to think of ways that we could get past this noise. There were you know, a few outlets who were attempting it or trying different things. Um, and I was trying to figure out how to do it, but coming up blank, more or less. And then one of my old editors reached out to me about this company that was thinking of starting a string of local news networks where disinformation was being heavily, distributed. So I reached out to them. They said they're looking to start it in Arizona, and we were able to launch in October 2019 with big plans to get out there, get an office, be out in the community, and then COVID hit, and I feel like we were able to be, yeah. So we couldn't be out in the community, but I feel like we were able to be a really helpful resource to a lot of people who were confused, scared, didn't know what was going on, didn't know who to believe, and I think we were able to one provide a resource and a place where people could go for information. And I think that we actually did a lot to open up the media landscape here. After we, had a successful year in 2020, several other smaller local outlets opened up. Arizona Agenda, Lookout, which caters to the LGBTQ community, Luminaria in Tucson. these are all outlets that are staffed by journalists who are at the Republic or at, Channel 12 or somewhere else, but they couldn't report the way that needed to be reported on. It wasn't helpful for people. So it's something that I think if we can see more of, we'll start to see a shift in how people digest news and understand what's going on. But it's a long battle ahead of us.
Can you speak to that a little bit? Like over the years, I mean, and I don't expect you to be an expert on the data or anything like that, but over the years in Arizona, from those larger publications like Arizona Republic, Tucson Sentinel, whatever, well, how much of a reduction in staffing have these news outlets?
Oh, it's been massive. It's I don't even know if I quantify it. Half feels too conservative. Especially some of the bigger ones, the Arizona Republic and Channel 12, they're both owned by the same company, Gannett. And so
Mhm.
they've gone back and forth between merging and splitting, and every time they do, they have massive layoffs there. I mean, there's entire segments of information that don't have dedicated reporters anymore. And so it's very frightening, honestly.
I mean, I am not a journalist. I did go to the Hugh Downs School of Human Communication.
Oh, no way.
Even got to meet Hugh Downs a couple of times because that was pretty cool.
Oh,
But I am not a journalist, but I was frustrated. Again, I know that local media, local journalism does not have the bandwidth to be able to, and they've got their editors breathing down their necks and basically dictating what they can and cannot cover. So school boards are small potatoes, but they're really important. So,
yes.
I put my silly little, snarky creative writing skills to work to just try to cover it and to prevent my own self from going absolutely batshit crazy. So there's that. But yeah, like it's not as if you can have a dedicated reporter that can cover all 58 school districts or all 300 in the state of Arizona. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I was trying to freshen up on where the school board races were at before this, and it would take hours to try and figure out what's going on just in Maricopa County, and then because we're still counting ballots, it's going to change in 24 hours anyway. It's just something where it needs people who are dedicated to track it, report on it, let people know what's going on, and they're
Mm-hmm.
people just and major outlets just aren't willing to put in the money to provide that service anymore
Mm-hmm. I
because
mean,
it's not where the money's at.
not when you can see videos of Mudang, spitting out water, drinking whatever they. Anyway, for the rest of you, FYI, you want to switch that little button on the bottom from hosts and panelists to everyone because I can see a lot of you talking out there, but not everybody can see you. I also want to invite you to ask Cameron any questions you might have. He may or may not know about some of these more detailed, down ballot races or whatnot, but feel free to ask those questions. But in the meantime, Cameron, what are your thoughts about, because we really focus here in this space on more local politics, but I know that there's a dark cloud over all of us now, the national politics. I all feel like we know what that means. That Project 2025 is going to happen, that all three branches of government are going to be under one party's control, that, the judiciary, that we've got two Supreme Court justices who can now safely step down. Like we know that stuff. So let's talk turkey when it comes to Arizona. Um, what are your thoughts about the legislative races? And I'm thinking specifically of like, what were some surprises that you saw throughout the state?
Yeah, I think I mean the battleground districts aside, I think the biggest surprises I've seen is one in LD 17, which covers parts of Tucson. Last cycle, they elected Justine Wadsack, who is just as well. She's not a very talented legislator, but she is very loud. She's a very bombastic member of the local Freedom Caucus. Was very front facing. Was very well known. She was good at being in the news. She lost her primary to the person she'd beaten in the last time around. And now in that district, which was three Republicans, two in the House, one in the Senate, now the senator is a Democratic senator is in the lead, John McLean, he's running against Leach, and then Kevin Volk actually has the most votes in the House. And this is a district that it I would say money was put into it for, I would say, vindictive reasons, because people really didn't like Justine Wonsack. It wasn't really a focus of political think tanks of what could be a battleground district, but money was put in it. Smart candidates were chosen, and it looks like they're on track to flip both of those seats, which I don't know if anyone honestly thought that would happen. And
No,
yeah,
I was hopeful, but I certainly didn't think that it was going to happen. Yeah.
yeah, especially since the Republicans chose the more, I mean, I use this term very loosely, the more moderate Vince Leach, who is a very extreme, very, very radical, fascist adjacent, if not fascist inherently. They chose him over this, Freedom Caucus, longtime Trump person. And so for John McLean to take the lead, I think it just speaks to people's dissatisfaction at the local level with that kind of representation. Federally, like you said, for whatever reason, people, they see Trump and they see someone that they want in office. But what we're seeing in a lot of states is that a, a, a not small number of people only filled him out on their ballot. They filled out Trump and then they mailed their ballot in. They didn't fill out down ballot. That's one of the reasons so many Democratic senators in these battleground states, like Ruben Gallego, is on track to win his seat, is because people saw Trump and they're like, that's what I want. People who took the time to look over more local races. And I'm not saying it wasn't tight here, because it's still looking. I mean, we're we're still a very much in flux state, but people want local leadership who can actually speak to them, not in terminally online language. They want someone who can provide solutions. Another example of that is Stephanie Simrak in LD2. She was running against a few Republicans. It I didn't I didn't put much thought into that district. Just I had a feeling that they would go Republican. So the fact that she has such a lead, she's not just clinging; she has a resounding lead over a Republican incumbent and kind of a Republican Gen Z wannabe influencer type person.
Oh
Oh,
God,
sorry.
that guy. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm not even up to speed on that one, Cameron. Is Wilmoth the first Republican after Simicek on that one?
Yeah. Yeah. So Wilmeth is second.
Good.
Yeah, he's in second place, which is surprising because he just seemed like he would have a stronger lead. But again, that speaks to his um, waning popularity with the people who are living there.
Well, and it's also that shot strategy, which it looks like is getting some other districts, or at least one that I can think of, LD4, in some trouble. Am I correct
Yeah.
when I say that?
Yes. It's the same thing we saw in Yuma last cycle, where a Republican did a single shot. The party wasn't even paying attention down there, and now she's going to win re-election. It's looking like. And just so everyone's on the same page, single shot is for the Arizona House. You're able to vote for two people in Arizona, and we see this all over the ballot. We're a very complex electorate where people want to split their ticket. I've spoken with a lot of voters who do this, and they, whether misguided or not, they think that splitting government gives us balance. And it might have in the past. That doesn't really happen as much anymore because there's so much partisanship. And so instead of just picking both Republicans, or both Democrats, they'll pick one Republican and one Democrat. And so a single shot allows one person from that party to consolidate all of those split ticket voters. And so we're seeing that with Stephanie Simrak. Republicans are splitting their votes between Wilmoth and Bradshaw, but then giving all of their Democratic votes to that one candidate. So we see that in the ballot propositions as well. People want abortion access, but they also want anti-immigration laws. People want, people don't want, extreme oversight over state budgets, but they also want to criminalize homelessness. And so it's all across the board.
It's really, really such a mixed bag. Well, I mean, it's from where I'm standing, it's far more negative than positive. And again, we are nonpartisan, but we're focused on issues. And so the issues that we care most about, like reproductive justice, like, non-discrimination of everybody, but especially right now, including our LGBTQ folks, like, we're all gonna have to brace ourselves for some really dark times, I feel like. Okay, let's switch gears just a little bit because you did bring up Prop 139. Like, what do you, okay, because I just had this idea that when people think of access to abortion and reproductive justice, don't they think of one party in particular over another? It seems that they don't. Like, can you explain that? I mean, I'm really happy that 139 kind of blew it out of the water, but then why would they have gone in some of these districts, do you think, to then go and elect people who at the first, at the drop of a hat, they're going to take that right away again if they can find a way to do so. Or even with the justices, Bullock and King. Like, was it just that there wasn't enough messaging? Is it just that people knew abortion but couldn't think about abortion through anything but that tunnel vision? Like, what is it? I'd love to hear your take.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's probably a million different takes. I don't know how accurate mine are, but my initial thoughts are that on issue specific voting, like the Arizona Abortion Access Act, people can vote for that because it's very simple, very straightforward. This is what we're getting. If they say, I want that. They look at something larger like the legislature, and they may not be as familiar with it. They may not be, super key. Most people aren't super keyed into what's going on at the legislature. By, I would say by no fault of their own, we live in a very capitalistic society where people have to work 10, 12 hours a day, take care of their families, pay all their bills. How do you have time to watch 6 hours of legislative meetings, and so they see the legislature or candidates based on parties in more broad strokes. And so they might say, well, I know this ballot proposition will protect abortion access, but I also think Republicans are better on immigration or the
Just,
economy
yeah, yeah.
or something that, because they are only getting a base level of information, they don't think past it. And they might have even been involved when the total ban was about to go in place, but they heard the legislature repealed it. And so they said, well, they aren't going to do a ban, so I don't have to worry about that. Now, I think they're wrong. I think that the legislature, Republicans in the legislature they're not, I mean, there's been a brain drain, so I don't know how effective they'll be, but they are very focused on finding ways to chip away at those rights. They tried to chip away at our minimum wage laws this cycle, and I predict if whether or not they control the legislature, they're going to introduce a number of bills to chip away at abortion access in different ways.
Okay, so that brings me to another question that that I jotted down here is so we all kind of saw how these poor Republicans really had a hard time figuring out how to work with the governor. So, they just like threw a billion ballot
Yeah.
initiatives at the voters, creating 4 pages of stuff. So are we going to see more of that this legislative session, Cameron?
Uh, if if Republicans control both chambers of the legislature, and maybe I'm too pessimistic, but I'm more I'll believe a flip when I see it. So I'm going in with the assumption that they will likely keep control of both. Now, still counting votes, we don't know. I've I don't know if I've ever lived, and it's been, I think, like 30 years since they haven't had total control, so it's hard to imagine what it would be like. But with a Democratic governor, this next session with Republicans controlling the legislature, I think they've seen enough success from their ballot proposition melee that they're not going to have any reason not to do that again. Um,
Do you think they'll do it in 2025, or do you think they'll save it for 26 during the midterm elections? Because I would imagine that those ballot initiatives are probably going to garner more, I guess they could garner more support or opposition in an off year. But like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so any ballot proposition they pass in 2025 would be held until the 26th ballot. We had
Okay.
a few on the ballot this year from 2023. And so yeah, so I think they would be more motivated to do it now. One, because the like any pushback or controversy in the media or from the public will have died down by 2026, and so they can campaign away from that. So if say they send a constitutional amendment to the ballot to ban abortion after 6 weeks, for example, which they could, um, they would want to do that this year because then they can more or less hide away from it by the time 2026 rolls around. But I think they're going to be encouraged. I mean, they saw a lot that didn't pass, but they saw enough that did. That
Mm-hmm.
I and if they grow their majorities, that's more Republicans introducing bills. I mean, it comes down to just numbers.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I heard Kathy Herod on NPR this morning promising, asserting that they are already regrouping and they are already figuring out how they can go around the will of the people. So just chew on that for a minute, secular fam, because like that is what if they don't get their way, they will game the system and figure out the loopholes so that they can get their way in another way. That's
They
something
did
that
it
we'll
with school
see.
vouchers. They'll do it with they tried to do it with abortion this year. They tried to do it with minimum wage, and they have no reason not to keep trying.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to take a glance here at it's mostly I see comments, people checking in. I do like this recommend or this suggestion from Matt. Matt says the French go to the homes of elected officials and protest and make themselves heard. I think this needs to be a thing here. I mean, yeah. I mean, we have seen it be a thing. And then they'll try to legislate against it. And I think they even like passed a bill this past year where, and I think it was bipartisan actually, where you don't have to list your address because people are crazy. Like, look at Steve Richard. He already deleted his Twitter account. I mean, good for the
Yeah,
guy. Like I would too if I were him, to be honest. What? Okay, let's
yeah.
talk. Let's talk about Justin Heap real quick, since we brought up Richard. Thoughts on Heap? Is he going to keep our election safe and secure?
So I mean, not if he can help it. Um, but a lot of it's going to be an interesting situation. A lot of the actual election administration um, work has been moved to the board of supervisors. Um, but then it depends on who's in the board of supervisors. I believe, I mean, if there are election deniers and skeptics, they are going to implement things that the most fringe conspiracy theorists have put together on ways to, fix our elections. Although they have been strangely silent the past couple of days. Uh, I haven't heard a single Republican talk about voter fraud or anything since Wednesday. So it's funny how that works.
Really shocking.
Um,
Yeah.
so I, I think he will want to do things. Again, a lot of it also comes down to the state legislature because there's certain things being on the county level, there's certain things done at the state level. So he's going to try. I don't know if he has the political acumen to accomplish it. A lot of these things do take intelligence. I mean, not to, but it takes a level of political intelligence and being experienced in how to do these things. I mean, we saw last session the Republicans put together all these plans on how they would like trick people into not voting for the abortion ballot measure, and then they accidentally mailed it out to everyone. Like they don't have they pushed out people who know the system. Rusty Bowers, I mean I have no love lost for him. He did one good thing one time during an insurrection, so respect where it's due. He was very politically competent. He is very smart.
Mhm.
People like Justin Heap, like Jake Hoffman, like Warren Peterson, they are blunt objects who don't know the system. Now, unfortunately, there has been a brain drain on both sides. You know, we've lost Senator Mendez, we've lost Representative Solomon, we've lost Jennifer Pollock. We could be losing Christine Marsh. There's a lot of unknowns, but I would lean on the side of incompetence with some of these things, especially with some of the other Maricopa County positions. If the Maricopa County School Board of Supervisor or Maricopa County Superintendent is the Republican Shelley Boggs. She has big plans, but it seems as if she doesn't really know how that role works. My biggest, if you don't mind me jumping to that, I think you have
I think no, they're going to
well.
coach her. You know what? They're going to have some Turning Point USA operative in there coaching her on every single radical extremist that has gone through the Turning Point USA University or whatever their program is. That's the other thing too. There's so much money going into these races by like, okay, Secular AZ, we don't have a huge budget. Turning Point USA, Alliance Defending Freedom, Kathy Herod's organization, millions of dollars, teams of attorneys. This is truly a David and Goliath situation right now. No, well, no, the pun is completely intended since it's a biblical story, but like really, this is why, and I wasn't trying to use this as an opportunity to ask for money, but we need your help. And if you know anybody who practices law or has some legal acumen, we need volunteers, as many as we possibly can, because we've never had as many lawsuits as we have this year. And it's been a steady increase year after year since Secular AZ has been doing this work. So like, yeah. And I don't even remember what brought me to that, but like, yes, Shelley Boggs, we're going to see the worst of the worst. Deeply unserious school board candidates will be appointed and probably in places and probably in exchange for a rational pro public school, school board member who, maybe is actually a parent or actually an educator, but just had to move or got sick. And she is going to not honor the will of the voters in those situations. This is my prediction, by the way. I'm sure that all the haters are out there and they're going to watch this and they're going to clip it, but they'll just, that's what she's going to do. And even more, go ahead, Cameron. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was kind of sorry to go on what you're saying. One thing that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. I started doing a little bit of investigation before the election, but there's been a very distinct rise in threats, aggression, hostility against educators and school board members who aren't part of the far right. People have been asking for extra security, or they've been getting calls at their house, that sort of thing. I would not be surprised to see a situation where there are targeted harassment attacks with the intention of getting school board members to resign so that they can then be replaced by Superintendent Boggs with someone who aligns with their stripped down public schools mentality.
And that is something that some of these lone school board candidates are already trying to do. They're gumming up the works. As if I sat on my school board for 8 years, and it could be really, really rewarding work when it's done collaboratively and sincerely. And so I've seen these folks get onto their school boards and really try to just overwhelm, confuse, throw out a bunch of FOIA, Freedom of Information requests, public records requests. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that school districts then have to answer to those private or public records requests, or to the frivolous lawsuits like Rachel Walden and Mesa Public Schools, which thankfully was dismissed. Heather Rooks in Peoria is still pending. So yeah, their intention, they're not there to actually help the kids in those schools. And I say this however many times I publish it with my Substack, the intention is to destroy public schools. That's it.
So even if the lawsuit's dismissed, and that's still a win because the school has had to spend public dollars defending these things, where that money should be going to books, computers, transportation, free school lunches, things that would actually benefit their communities.
Mm-hmm. And this is why I said a couple of weeks ago that the the capitalistic spirit of, individualism and just as long, let me get all that I can get for myself. We're on the brink of collapse here. There are a few comments. So Ian, who's the vice chair of our board, is mentioning that things in LD13 are not looking good right now. I believe that's Keith Seaman's district, if I'm not mistaken. Please feel free to correct me in the chat. Jennifer is saying, I disagree that running all 3 seats in LD4 is the reason for the loss. Shaw is now losing way bigger than Hodge last cycle. It's a Dem backlash, not the strategy in LD4, in her opinion. Shay agrees with Jennifer. The Dem backlash is real and unengaged Dems didn't show up to vote. Absolutely. RJ says white women still primarily vote for Republicans, even though they voted for reproductive freedoms. I'm delighted 139 succeeded, but what happens when a national abortion ban is signed? Republicans already stopped a Social Security increase from taking place. We will all feel our services restricted almost immediately. Can you speak to that?
There's a lot of unknowns. I can do my best to address a federal abortion ban. And this is going to be complete personal opinion. I don't think Donald Trump cares about abortion either way. I think he used it while it was politically expedient, and he shied away from it in his campaign and was very adamant that he made up the narrative that it was what everyone wanted for it to go to the states. And I would be surprised if he signed an abortion ban. Now, I mean, the man is full of surprises, so he could just out of retribution and in a desire to control and restrict women, which would put the constitutionality of our abortion ban in jeopardy. The same way that Roe versus Wade took away our 1864 abortion ban, it made that unenforceable. In the same way, an actual on the books, legislated, signed into law abortion ban nationwide would supersede any local laws. Now that would go to the courts, but I don't see much hope for abortion rights in the courts because
Yeah. And he's also beholden. I mean, he's beholden to the Christian nationalists, the evangelical extremists in this country. He made a deal with those folks. And so, I mean, we all know that the guy doesn't have any scruples, but I agree with you. If he can subjugate women and be cruel to women, he's going to do that. We've seen all the court cases. We know about Epstein's plane and all that kind of stuff. And I also think that he's going to have some right-wing religious leader there that's going to tell him, hey, remember, you've got to stick with this one because otherwise you're going to lose that evangelical base. And so he's going to do it. And then through the courts, we'll all be, forced to carry our rapist baby. But whatever.
And that can even be done, again, depending on his vitriol, it could be very incremental. It could be in enforcing the Comstock Act and restricting access to abortion medication, which again would be a legal battle to determine if that qualifies as something, an exception in Arizona's new constitutional amendment, or if it's something where we'd have to adhere to federal law. I mean, the short is that it's going to be messy, and it's not going to be as loud and ceremonial in a lot of ways that we think. The crux of Project 2025 was the idea that Donald Trump did not need the legislative branch to execute these powers. And so while in the past, there were big signings for bills and there was a big to do over John McCain down thumb, on the repealing the ACA. If he follows Project 2025, and that comes down to who he surrounds himself with, which could be other people who wrote it, he doesn't need the legislative branch. And if that's the case, it's not going to be loud. it's going to be a small thing like, oh, I've decided to reinstitute the Comstock Act. Might not put a press release on it, might not answer it, might not even tell people that he did it, except suddenly pharmacies don't carry it anymore. And suddenly
Mm-hmm.
prescribers can't offer it anymore. And it's not something that we hear about. People get loud, but then he has room and cover because doing it this way allows him to distance himself from it. And
Mm-hmm.
so the people who voted for Prop 139 and Donald Trump will continue to support him because he has just enough cover for them to give that support.
And kind of going along with what you're saying, Lindsay says a federal law supersedes state laws, but we need to look outside of ban on abortion procedure explicitly. Most likely it will be a ban on pharmaceutical abortion pills. Man, great minds. Yeah. Let's see what else. Yeah, Brandy Reese is the LD 13. No, 13 is Brandy Reese. Yeah, and
Yeah,
Gonzalez and
13th, yeah, Jeff
Shamrita.
Winiger, Julie Willoughby, and Brandy Reese.
Yeah, yeah.
There's because
Okay.
it got mentioned earlier. And I believe someone asked about our coverage of Christian nationalism in town councils. Um,
Yeah.
we so I would love to only cover that. I think there's a lot there. Uh, that said, we are a very small staff, and so in regards to school boards and city and town councils, we largely rely on tips from readers and citizens and residents. And so if you have, because I unfortunately don't have the time to watch every state legislature session, every town council in the county, in the state. Unfortunately, I don't. So that's where if you see something, if you could send me a tip and let me know, that gives us capacity. That saves us a lot of time. We
And
can't do it
I was
without
just
you.
going to say, let's make sure that Cameron's email address is correct because
Oh,
it is, hold on, I'm going to put it in here, CAMARON is it Courier News? Courier
Courier
Newsroom.
Newsroom. Yeah, Courier Newsroom.
Okay. Just so you have the correct, let me make sure I spelled that right.
Oh,
Okay,
shoot.
good. I think we're good. Oh, good. Sure. Lindsay already got it there. But yeah, it's not ERON, it's ARON. So make sure you get that right. Let's see.
Cool. Yeah, we all got it in
Oh yeah, the Siemens are in LD 16. So here's a good question. This is coming from Judy. She says, do AZ House and Senate rules carry over from one year to another? Question mark.
there. Nope.
Okay, because she says Speaker Toma and Senate Warren Peterson made some real restrictions last year. Will the new president and speaker start anew in the legislature? So they have to start anew, is what you're saying.
So they do. Okay, so I will. They do start a new session. Everything's wiped clean. They usually just adopt the rules that they made from the previous year. And even, or they just don't do anything. The Senate Ethics Committee hasn't adopted rules in several sessions, which is technically against the law, but
When
you
you're in
know,
charge, you don't have to follow the law, right?
yeah. I guess it's not a thing. But yeah. So they'll probably keep those same rules if it's the Republican legislature.
Okay, let's see. Matt is saying they're building up a Supreme Court that will let him sign an executive order. And if we and our representatives fight it, the court will just back his play and silence the people. Sadly, I agree with you, Matt. And yes, that is why we need to fix the court. But when you got this guy as president, I mean, he appointed more judges, not just at SCOTUS, y'all, but at every level of the courts. You have Mitch McConnell to thank for that. I mean, we can at least say that tippy turtle looking dude definitely has a good long game. We can at least say that, right?
Yeah, he's got that political acumen,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
unlike Justin Heap. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. I have a personal connection with him. He used to do this thing on Twitter where he would come at me and then he would block me. And then he would come at me and then he would block me in his really poorly fitted suit. So and then I would call him a bear, like I would just be like, "Oh, you're just a little closeted bear, aren't you?" You know what I mean? Like just because I knew it would make him crazy and it did. It really did.
Oh yeah,
So
he's probably lost sleep over that.
he's
Once he Googled it and found
adorable.
out what it was.
I know he's so cute. Not really. All right. Isn't it time to stop thinking of him as behaving according to usual norms in any situation? Absolutely, Jude. Yes, we can't ever think of anybody connected to him. Even those like Mitch McConnell's, Ted Cruz's, right? Like Lindsey Graham's, they're all garbage. But like they used to at least like pretend, and I believe all of them said that he would be the worst thing for America. But as long as they can ride on
And they
his,
endorsed him.
yeah, power coattails or the threats of what he could do, because when he makes threats to you, it could dismantle your entire world and you're getting death threats and people are targeting you, and it's scary. So people fall into line with that guy. Let's see. What will what will he do if what will we do? I'm not sure, Claudette. It says, what will H do if doctors simply leave like they did in Idaho? So I mean, like it's just gonna happen and people are gonna die. Like I wish there was, do you have a better answer for that, Cameron?
Well, I mean, the short of it is that for the majority of people, they will not have access. For wealthy or privileged, they can go to other states. I know California did a very performative. We'll let you come. We'll license your doctor to perform abortion-related healthcare in our state. But who can afford to travel to another state with their doctor? Realistically, people just aren't going to have access. And what we're seeing where women are dying from it, that will only increase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. Matt's got something to say. It's just the scrolling feature on this particular laptop is like you scroll a little bit or you scroll all the way down. So I have to go real slow. Yes, that is what they want, Matt. I mean, clearly they're saying the quiet parts out loud. And for Nick Fuentes to come out and say your body, my choice forever. And for people to talk about women being like holy vessels, but not at all seeing our intrinsic value just as human beings. We're simply incubators. Yeah, no, they're not going to care if we die. You're absolutely right.
And
Yeah.
I want to thank Farrell. I think Farrell's your name. Um, Supporting abortion funds, support mutual aid, community funds. Um, a lot of these solutions are going to be at the hyper local level of us banding together, helping the people who live in your area and being able to build strength like that. Because in a lot of ways, we're not going to have access to uh, the safety and security that maybe we've been more comfortable with in the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm. And I think, I joke about this. I used to joke about it, and that's just not funny anymore. I love one of my favorite types of literature is dystopian fiction. And my joke is that I didn't realize I was supposed to be reading it and taking notes because it was a guidebook, but we truly are about to embark on some pretty dystopian times, folks. And I don't think any of us are, I mean, go back and read The Handmaid's Tale or even better. I mean, like the book is great, don't get me wrong, but having Margaret Atwood also be there as they wrote the screenplay for all however many seasons of that show there are. There's a scene that somebody reposted on TikTok recently, and it is a scene with June and Moira, who it's at the very beginning of the fascist regime now that they've taken control, and they are looking on their smartphones and realizing that their bank accounts have been liquidated and that they have been reclassified as citizens. And so they don't have access to their money anymore. And I mean, again, I am not trying to be hyperbolic here, but when you think about, let's say he puts Elon Musk in charge of the Fed. I mean, shit, he could put Joe Rogan in charge of like, I mean, he can do anything at this point. It's already looking messy. But what I do know is that he's surrounding himself with billionaires. And we are probably officially in an oligarchy at this point.
I was going to say if you want something less, not to prove that it's not hyperbolic, look to the Russian oligarchy that was set up. Look to the abortion restrictions that were set up in Hungary. Look at the economic collapse or despair of Brazil or the authoritarian regime in El Salvador. all of these things are from far right leaders who have risen on the economic frustration brought by COVID because our capitalist societies could not cater to that in a humane way, and so that's on the rise, and people are implementing that in different ways across the country. Yeah, Poland, Turkey, you name it, unfortunately.
Yeah. I can see, I just noticed that like a bunch of people dropped off, even though we still have like 9 minutes. And I'm sure that it's just a despair thing because usually we have really good retention on these calls. But I also know that it's been a tough week for many of us. So as you think about your publication and the strides that you've made over the last 5 years, um, first of all, we've been down at the Capitol together, and I want to know in the last 5 years, are people willing to talk with you, or are legislators willing to talk to you and actually treat you as if you have a working brain and aren't trying to like push you out of committee hearings or anything like that? Because I've seen journalists be targeted by the likes of like Jake Hoffman and Anthony Kern.
Yeah, well, I mean, after I actually I did a series on the toxicity of the state legislature last session, just on how Republican senators are bullying members of the public, harassing their fellow legislators, and breaking the law in order to create this hostile environment. And I was banned from the Senate floor after that. I could still go on the House floor, but they created a series of restrictive workarounds so that I could no longer access the Senate floor. So to say that there has definitely been opposition. I'm always you know moderate and more left, I guess, more democratic state representatives have been more open to talk with me. Um, Representatives who actually started in town or city government, nonpartisan positions, like I can't remember blanking on his name, but he represents Gilbert and he was on the Gilbert Town Council. He's always very willing to talk to me, which I found interesting. But other than that, the more far right you get, the more they only want to speak to their preferred news outlets. If you'll notice, they don't even, like Jake Hoffman, for example, doesn't even speak with the Republic. He doesn't recognize them. He only recognizes these tailored outfits. And there's even a few smaller outlets around here who I think are unwilling or unwitting mouthpieces where they're not necessarily propped up, but they have some of their reporters have been, I don't want to overuse the word groomed, but they've been chosen and are fed information and are given respectability in the journalistic community because they aren't blatantly, the gateway pundit. Um, but I've found that people are very open to talking with us. Members of the public are very open to talking, and I think in like at people's core, they want news that they can trust and rely on, and they want more than just clickbait, rage bait, he said, she said sort of thing. They want actionable solutions, which is one of the things that I have always tried to have in our reporting is an air of service journalism, a call to action. Here's what's happening in the world, and here's what you can do about it. Because otherwise, yeah, just like you said, Jennifer, it gets hopeless. It gets very depressing, and so that's something we keep in mind is we want people to know that there's always something you can do. It may be small, it may not feel like it will have an impact, but it will. Because even a small action taken by, the 50, 60 people who have been on this call, that's something. That fills a committee room. That fills a council chamber. And that can pay for someone to access an abortion or can save someone from deportation or can save someone from arrest. So I don't know, it goes farther than we think sometimes.
Mm-hmm. You said something that made me think, and then we're gonna have to close up here because I want to honor everybody's time. And I'm really looking forward to enjoying my weekend up here in Flag as well. Put my mind.
Yeah.
To rest for at least a couple more days. Do you ever talk to, because I remember, because I also unfortunately pay attention to like everything and I have a really hard time like stopping the information. But I paid a lot of attention over the last couple of years to what was going on in Tennessee, specifically with the Justins. Other places, I want to say maybe Montana was another place, but a lot of these state legislatures or assemblies are, they're existing in a supermajority, which Arizona just very recently had a Republican supermajority, and we've been chipping away at it. We'll see what happens with this election. But I do remember in like Tennessee and Montana that the press was completely barred from even like reporting. Do you ever talk to those journalists in those states where there are supermajorities? Or I mean, like, is this just like something that y'all like get on a group text and you're all like, yeah, Idaho here and everything sucks, you know?
We have there have been group chats from time to time, and it's unfortunately because our industry is so underfunded, or at least the reporters out in the field are so underpaid, and turnover is so high, it's hard to maintain anything like that. But yeah, no, I mean, I've spoken to people who've been barred, banned, arrested. Um, it's unfortunately it's just a job hazard at this point.
Well, and when you've got the top guy in charge who's literally telling, his followers that he should just kill all the journalists in the rally audience, like, I mean, that's
And
bananas.
Terry Lake said the same thing a few days, I think maybe the same day. Well, I was covering a protest at a Trump field office or an Elon Musk Trump field office with the Sunrise Movement a few weeks before the election. And the protesters were arrested, and the people who worked at the office tried to have us, myself and another reporter, arrested as well. It's what they want. They I mean, and again, we see this in any authoritarian regime. The first thing you do is cut off access to reliable information and replace it with your own propaganda.
State run. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Okay, we got 2 minutes. All right. Since Tuesday, Cameron, where do you find hope?
I find hope in this is going to sound bizarre, but a little bit in the past. This is a difficult time to be in, but we were here 4 years ago, or 8 years ago. We went through a Trump presidency. There was meaningful, successful opposition. There were people who successfully fought for what they believed in. He was incredibly incompetent. He promised a border wall and he built a 3 foot fence. His Muslim ban was overturned. He wasn't able to succeed, and that's when he had guardrails, uh, but that was the competent people who knew how to do things. And this time around, I think there's more retribution in mind, more vindictiveness, but there's also less competency. And I think after 8 years, opposition is more prepared, more battle worn, more weathered. And as long as people don't give up, and I don't think that they will, I think we can see a future.
Thanks for that. Thank you for putting it in that perspective. I really appreciate it. I do want to point out that Jude is bringing up ballot curing. You can go to mobilize.us. There are still, I think, several days to be able to cure ballots, and that's basically where you reach out to
Sunday.
voters who till Sunday, you said, Cameron?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so find an opportunity to do that, because that might be the difference for Kristen Engel, might be the difference for some other candidates. You don't know.
The only reason we have Chris Mays as our Attorney General is because of ballot, and it was
That's
only a
right.
few hundred votes,
That's
and
right.
so it does
Yeah.
make it.
Okay. Right on. Well, if this isn't enough for you all to not only support the work that we do here with Secular AZ, but also the good work that our local journalists like Cameron Stevenson and the Copper Courier do, I don't know what else you need, but I think that we're both deserving organizations who could really use your help in these times, and we'll be there to lift you up when you're feeling down. So thank you so much, Cameron Stevenson, on such short notice for coming in today. Honestly, you actually did give me a little bit more hope today. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks. Glad to come on anytime. I really appreciated the conversation, and I'm glad I ended with some hope because I felt very doom and gloom for most of it. But there is cause
Well,
for determination.
be careful what you wish for because we now have you on speed dial. So all right. Thanks so much, everybody. I hope that you at least take a moment to dip into some joy and find your hope this weekend because, well, Tuesday, because Monday is Veterans Day. So on Tuesday, we're all going to roll up our sleeves again. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Cameron.